Hi, today's lecture is going to be on VPC peering. So Google VPC peering allows internal IP address connectivity across virtual private cloud networks regardless of whether they belong to the same project or whether they belong to the same organization. So where is it useful? Some of the cases where it could be useful is, let's say you're designing a software as a solution within the Google ecosystem and you want that particular software to be used by, let's say, another organization, then VPC peering comes in handy because you can peer your network with that particular organization's network. The other case where it would be important is your organization has multiple different networks and you want to connect it between each other. Or there could also be a case where you have multiple organizations coming under the same owner and you want these multiple organizations to communicate with each other. In that case, VPC peering is actually quite helpful. The benefits of VPC peering is that it has low latency because the traffic is all within the Google network. That also makes it secure, and it's also more cost effective because you're not using external IP address, there is no egress cost that Google is factoring in. So it's much cheaper communicating between internal IP addresses than communicating between external IP addresses. So you have a project in your GCP account and it has two distinct VPC networks. One is 192.168.0 and 192.168.1. Let's say you have two virtual machines within these two. Now, because these two are not peered, it's not possible for these two IP instances to communicate with each other. So to make them communicate, you basically need to peer both of these VPC networks together. And once you have peered them, it's possible using the internal IP addresses for both of them to communicate with each other. So let's go and see a demo. So I have created two instances, instance 1 and instance 2, and they're both in two different networks. The first one is my first and the other one is my second VPC. And they both have separate internal IP addresses and they do not have any external IP address. So let's go and check the network and see how that is set up. So as you can see that these two networks have just one subnets and it has a range of 192.168.0.0.24. And the other one has 192.168.1.0.24. Let's check the firewall rules. So I have created 4 firewall rules. The second and the fourth one is basically so that we are able to communicate with that instance using SSH. And the first and the third is basically to allow ICMP pings to happen between both those networks. So basically the first one I have created is that I can allow ICMP pings, and it can only come from the second VPC's IP range. Similarly for the second one as well. So this is my second VPC's firewall. So this allows only ICMP pings to come in from the first network, that is my first VPC. So these are the 4 firewall rules that I have created. So let's try to communicate without any VPC peering. So I go back to my compute engine. So I've opened both these instances. So using instance 1, let me see if I'm able to communicate with instance 2. So I'll just copy this. As you can see that it is not able to communicate. So let's do one thing. Let's peer both these networks together and see whether after that is done, whether it's able to communicate. So for that, I need to go to my VPC network peering. So here I'll peer both those networks together. So let me create a VPC peering connection. Continue. So I will just give my first VPC. So it falls within the same project. And I will peer it with the second VPC. And let me just click on create. So once it's created, you can still see that it's inactive because it has to be peered the other way around as well. So what I've done currently is peered my first VPC with my second VPC, I have to create a peering on the other side as well. That is, my second VPC has to be peered to my first VPC. So let me create another peering connection. So this will be my second VPC. That will be peered to my first VPC. And let me just click on create. So once that is done, you can see that the active status appears here. So after this is done, let's see if you're able to ping. So as you can see that the ping has actually worked. So this is how you actually ping two networks, peer two networks together. I hope this was useful. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you.